Kawhi Leonard has played in 28 games since the start of December. The Clippers' record during that time, 24-4. Their success has been fueled by an all-time great offense. In the nearly 1,000 minutes Kawhi's played since then, they've scored over 127 points every 100 possessions. No, that's not a typo, they're actually that good. And while there are a ton of different factors you can point to, I think it all comes back to Kawhi's ability to put the ball in the basket. Maybe better than any other player in the league. A lot of his offense starts away from the ball. They'll run him off of screens inside the arc to set up mid-range jumpers. These actions are so effective because he can hit while moving in either direction, over contests, just an easy source of offense. And if his defender does a good job of sticking with him around a screen, taking away the jumper, he'll just use all of that space to get into a quick isolation. This play starts with him down near the baseline, and he's going to run off a pin down moving towards the ball. His defender chases him from behind, while AD steps up to contest a potential jumper. So Kawhi just holds for a second and turns it into a face-up before rising up for a midi anyways. When facing up like this, he'll use the threat of that jumper to create openings. With a little up fake, he gets his defender off the floor, leaving him with room to attack the big and finish. He's got a pretty explosive first step, so it's pretty tough to stay in front of him. You've got to respect the jumper, but by the time he's darting baseline, it's too late to recover. More times than not, that means he requires a second defender. But if the help comes even a fraction of a second too late, his length still gives him access to angles as a finisher. So what ends up happening is you'll see that second defender load up early. Grant Williams sits on the block, taking away a right-hand drive, and while most players would try to find a way to get back to the middle, Kawhi decides to attack baseline anyways and rises up for a tough jumper. That wasn't a one-time thing either. He's one of the game's best difficult shot makers, routinely hitting while fading away, heavily contested, and he's comfortable going to unorthodox shot angles. Like here, he's met by help at the nail, fakes a pass while stepping through, and takes off from one leg for a jumper. Or this one where he starts on a drive and gets bumped off balance, only to gather and push it in while falling backwards. Because he's comfortable going to so many different, unique angles, if he doesn't have a shot right away, he'll just use fakes and spins to hunt for one, this time getting to a jump hook. It all comes back to his ability to control his momentum. Notice how when his drive gets cut off, he drags his back foot to decelerate and leans back to the point he's almost parallel with the court, giving him a small window to float it up and in. Kawhi has some of the best body control you'll ever see in a professional athlete. He starts this attack with a ferocious spin, then when help comes he goes to a Euro step on his way to an open layup. Spins are a go-to counter for him. This time help meets him on the block, and he sets it up by first attacking middle before spinning baseline, where he can showcase some more of that body control. On this one he starts his drive down the middle, but the Rockets completely wall off the paint, so he uses that spin as a way to find open space and gets to a mid-range jumper. This right here is his bread and butter. On the season, he's attempting 9 mid-range shots every 75 possessions and hitting an efficient 48% of them. I talked about his difficult shot making, which of course gives him unlimited access in this area of the floor, but I want to focus on the wide variety of ways in which he can set them up. When working with a live dribble, he's just as comfortable pulling up from either hip, so what you'll often see him do is continuously cross back and forth. Defenders have no way of guessing when he's actually going to get into a shot, and by the time they contest, it's too late. That's because his release point is incredibly high. Here, Derek White plays virtually perfect defense, but Kawhi gets so much lift off the floor that he's able to just shoot right over him. And that high release also allows him to more effectively counter help defense. This play starts with him beating his man off the dribble, which triggers Jaren Jackson to step up and meet him. The ability to go over a shot blocker like that is huge. The main way Kawhi creates mid-range shots for himself though is with his strength. He's one of the strongest players in the NBA, especially in his lower body. So when he bumps a defender before stepping back, that's some pretty automatic separation. I talked about his use of spins. He'll often set them up with these bumps, making Dean Wade look like a crash dummy before turning into a wide open jumper. And because he's so good at creating space, with the shooting threat to go along with it, when he throws an up fake, defenders will bite, leaving him with an opening to step into. The combination of strength, footwork, and touch as a shooter has turned him into a pretty great scorer with his back to the basket. For one, he can hit the fade over either shoulder, and like I said, he can make some really tough shots. Here's one that starts with him backing down the bigger Julius Randle. I'm pretty sure the Knicks decide to come at him with a triple team, and he just turns away from it for a beautiful jumper. For the most part, after turning, he finds a shot he likes, but in the event he truly doesn't have space to shoot, he's got counters, going to a shoulder bump for a little breathing room, which is all he needs. In these spots, he's great at feeling out his defender and perfectly timing up his move. This time it's one of those explosive spins, completely discarding Barnes before pulling up for a jumper. And here's that exact same move, except over his other shoulder, and when rim protection comes to meet him, he's not having any of that. Those quick moves are made possible by some pretty explosive burst. I briefly talked about his first step, that especially stands out when he's isolating out in space. It's tough to stay in front of him, and as soon as help comes, he's showcasing some more of that beautiful footwork. When his initial attack angle actually does get cut off, that's when the strength will pop again, doing his best impression of Marshawn Lynch to set up an easy 2. Burst, strength, and length are 3 recipes to making a great slasher, and Kawhi's no exception. Even though Jared Allen, a big dude, cuts him off and they make contact, Kawhi doesn't move an inch. Then his 7'3" wingspan gives him access to a finishing angle. I actually want to harp on the wingspan for a sec because the way it plays into his attack is maybe the most unique quality about him as a player. I want you to think about guys who have wingspans in the 7'3" to 7'5" range. You've got Giannis, he's at his best out in space, and his go-to dribble move is the push crossover, allowing him to quickly change directions. Kevin Durant's another. He's at his best when he has room to set up his super exaggerated hezzy cross, catching ankles with the amount of ground that gets covered. The list goes on. Pascal Siakam, Brandon Ingram, they all have these loose, exaggerated handles that allow them to eat up space. But that means they also all have the same problem. When quicker defenders are able to get up under them and take away that room, all of a sudden their handles become a lot more limited because they rely on the looseness of it all. Kawhi, on the other hand, has the same type of length, except his handle is tight like a small point guard, and that means it's nearly impossible to stop him from getting wherever he wants to go. It also means that he doesn't turn it over. Over the last 2 seasons, he's averaging just 1.8 turnovers every 75 possessions. I don't think I need to explain how impressive that is. Having such a tight handle to go along with the rest of his skill set leaves him with an unlimited amount of counters. If he tries to attack one way and the defense does a good job, he can just keep his dribble alive and hunt for something else. Like I said, there really isn't a shot he doesn't like. Here's a play that starts with a high ball screen, and Porter Jr. jumps out to meet him on a switch. He appears to be starting on a drive right, and instead throws a nasty cross back to his left, which leaves him with room to rise up for 3. That's right, in addition to everything I've talked about, he also brings the off-the-dribble 3-point threat. The wide variety of ways in which he creates in the mid-range also applies here. He can pull from either hip, while stepping back, heavily contested, it doesn't matter. And over the last 2 seasons, he's hit exactly 40% of these opportunities on over 200 attempts. In simpler terms, what in the world are you supposed to do as a defender? He can play with a live dribble from the perimeter, where he's a threat to pull up for 3, but even more so to explode on a drive and either get to the rim or utilize the mid-range. He can face up inside the arc, where he'll shoot over most defenders, and those who are big enough to contest likely aren't quick enough to stay in front of him. He can play with his back to the basket, where he's just as comfortable turning over either shoulder, has incredible footwork, and is strong enough to back down opposing bigs. And if you're somehow able to take all of that away, you better be able to chase him around screens, because the Clippers run a large chunk of their offense through him as an off-ball weapon. All that's to say, no matter how you approach the Kawhi matchup, him and his team have a counter. The skill set and utter lack of any limitation is absurd, proving why he's so impossible to guard. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you think of Kawhi. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.